There's something so fascinating about watching suspected criminals kind of at work.
Technology that tracks our every move is designed to help us make better decisions.
The arrests will go into the database. All that data will be collected that it was drug related.
For police, artificial intelligence promises to help reduce crime and eliminate racial bias that has long plagued law enforcement.
Crime has been reduced well over 20%. Predictive policing is part of that success.
But is data-driven policing truly colorblind?
There's always a reason in the car to pull you over. There's always something wrong.
Or is it unwittingly supercharging racial bias?
If you unthinkingly develop a data-driven policing system based on past police practices, you're kind of going to reify past police practices.
We say no to these programs and we say no to data-driven policing.
They're coming inside harassing us, even my 11-year-old son.
Sophia's a mother of 3 boys, and her middle child was just arrested for a robbery she says he couldn't have committed because he was with family at the time. His case is now pending in juvenile court.
He play Fortnite, the video game. That's what he do. He don't go outside. He don't hang out or anything. I been trying to be strong, y'all. I told you I wasn't gonna work, but I can't.
The Los Angeles Police Department patrols a population of over 4 million people in a city with a crime rate that's 17% above the national average. More than twice as many arrests per square mile occur in a relatively small section of the city known as South LA.
This is one of the most heavily policed parts of Los Angeles. The police station is here. I've already counted like 9 bail bond storefronts.
The LAPD has a history of disproportionately targeting minority communities like this one, where nearly all of the residents, about 98%, are people of color. A 2008 study by researchers at Yale Law School revealed that for every 10,000 residents in Los Angeles, 3,400 more black people are stopped than white people. And when stopped, blacks are 127% more likely to be frisked than whites. That's despite the fact that frisked black people were 42% less likely to be found with a weapon, and when consensually searched, were 24% less likely to be found with drugs. The same study also found significant discrepancies between how police treated white versus Hispanic residents.
You know, I started getting in trouble. I was first arrested like at 12 or 13 years old. And then I ended up catching a felony and like doing jail time. What's up, everybody? Today we're gonna be talking about like know your rights.
Anthony Robles is a formerly incarcerated youth-turned-community leader. He works with young people in the area on civil rights training and racial profiling.
Fit the description is a common thing they use. How many people have been told they fit the description by a cop? Raise your hand. Almost all of us, right?
Do you still get stopped?
Yeah, not as frequently as before, but yeah. I was stopped in an Uber as a passenger. So I got in my Uber and we were going down the street. He pulled over the Uber, he told him to stop. And then he comes to the back window and he tells me, hey, what's up, man? How you doing? I was like, what? And the Uber driver's even like, what's that about? I go, I have no idea. And he goes, wow, I was like straight racial profiling. He goes, that's crazy.
Do you get stopped when you're driving?
Yeah.
How often does that happen?
Probably like maybe once a month or once every other month.
But police bias against communities of color has long been a problem nationwide, including in the country's largest police department, the NYPD.
We have the lowest murder rate of any city in America.
New York's Police Commissioner Ray Kelly defends what's called the stop and frisk policy, which allows officers to detain anyone who they find suspicious.
In 2011, at the height of the stop and frisk program, black people were almost 6 times more likely to be stopped and frisked than white people. But now, police are starting to harness new tools some departments say keep streets safe by just following the hard data. About 13 miles east of Los Angeles, The El Monte Police Department has outfitted its patrol cars with a highly targeted artificial intelligence-driven tool for fighting crime.
We're on Valley Mall, which is an older commercial area. A lot of pedestrian traffic, there's vehicles, so there's a lot of opportunities for property crimes and thefts.
The program is called Predpol, short for Predictive Policing. It uses an algorithm that sifts through historical property crime data to find a pattern that points police to the location where the next crime is likely to be committed.
Valley Mall will often make it on Predpol as an address in particular because there are so many businesses, and when you have crimes occurring in one area, that's going to produce that you should spend more time, and that's more chances that they're going to deter something before it turns into a crime.
What is the aim of this Predpol software?
Ultimately is to help just reduce and prevent crime.
Is there a quantifiable measure of its success?
The last 19 months, crime has been reduced well over 20% in the city. That's after a couple years of a spike. So the last 2 years, over 20%. That's a success. And yes, I have to say predictive policing, Predpol, is part of that success.
I mean, on some levels, it makes perfect sense. You send your assets to where the data tells you that they're most needed. But by nature, the data sets that Predpol is feeding off of and generating its conclusions from are inherently biased because of biased policing over the years.
With Predpol, though, we are looking and we're targeting crime. We're not biased towards any certain group of people. Really, we're taking out the human factor with Predpol is that there is none. We're not profiling people, but rather profiling crime.
So this all sounds very, very promising with the stated goal of stopping crimes, preventing crimes from ever taking place. Are predictive policing programs effectively doing that?
And the idea that we can identify using past crime data where a crime will occur in the future. We don't know if that works. We just don't have data on it. But what we've seen in the first iterations of some of these technologies hasn't been a whole lot of foresight, hasn't been a whole lot of thought about what are the inputs we need to choose in order to be able to use and get outputs we want that won't be colored by the problems we know are inherent in lots of policing, especially urban policing.
The LAPD is one of the pioneers when it comes to policing, particularly the use of technology. Where have they stood when it comes to the deployment and development of predictive policing?
So LAPD was the place where predictive policing was born. Chief Braden, when he went to LA, was the person who put the green light on the first attempts at place-based predictive policing using Predpol. They also helped pioneer a person-based predictive policing program called LASER.
There was Jim Crow, segregation, broken windows, Comstat, and now we are in the era of data-driven, precision-based policing. Yet it still remains the same, the banishment of Black and brown and poor people.
In contrast to location-based Predpol, LASER targeted individuals most likely to commit a crime by assigning them points based on their personal criminal histories like gang membership, arrests, and so-called quality interactions with police. Individuals with sufficient points are then assigned a chronic offenders bulletin, similar to a most wanted poster, and those bulletins are disseminated to officers.
Do you know that LAPD has a secret list of people that they track and they trace?
Since 2011, the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition has been fighting against the program, filing public records requests and alerting the public to what they say are biases built into the system.
There's a list, there's a bulletin of people who are by name targeted by the police.
Yes, every field interview card that gets filled out on you, you get a point. So the more often you're stopped by law enforcement and they fill out a field interview card on you, the more points you get. But when we look at stops, in 2017, the Black community was stopped 5 times more than the white community. That's who's getting the points.
So once you're on the list, you're not getting off the list.
Well, they claim you can get off the list if you don't have interactions with law enforcement. But if the instructions to law enforcement is to find you, follow you, stop you, violate you, how are you ever going to get off the list?
You're caught up in a feedback loop.
Yeah, and that's a very big implication to have your name and your picture, where you live, who you hang out with, what you do, what kind of car you drive, to be in the hands of a line officer who now has you targeted as a person of interest.
So the laser program was designed on the metaphor that they were going to, like laser surgery, remove the tumors, the bad actors, from the community. That idea, offensive as it is, was an idea of using some kind of algorithm to identify risk. Things like past criminal history, past gang membership, past weapons offenses, and contacts with police.
However innocuous that contact was.
Right. And one of the insidious things about the laser program was, it was, on one hand, a measure of social control. How do we get police to contact the people we think are more at risk for violence? But also collect a whole lot of data that they would just store and use for later investigative purposes.
Good morning. Let the record reflect Commissioners Sobroff, Decker, Bonner, and Goldsmith are present, and we have a quorum.
In 2019, after an internal review by the LAPD Inspector General revealed that there were significant inconsistencies in terms of how individuals were selected and retained in the program, in a rare reversal for the department, Laser was dissolved.
People up here are trying to take responsibility. They're trying to say it was because of them that this has happened, but this started by suing you. Started by suing the LAPD because you refused to turn over information about Operation Laser. That is where this started.
The same internal review had also found flaws in the Predictive system, but because it targets locations rather than individuals, that program remains in operation.
Fundamentally, I believe that data-driven strategies improve policing, and that improves community safety. Violent crime in Los Angeles is, in reality, not evenly distributed across the city of this size.
In addition to person-based targeting, the laser program also established location-based laser zones for officers to patrol. Stop LAPD Spying Coalition's California Public Records request revealed that until the program was shut down in 2019, one of the homes on that list was Sophia London's.
Me? Everybody said me.
Sophia's son was arrested after the laser program was shut down, and there's currently no way for members of the public to confirm any connection between former laser zones and subsequent arrests of residents within that zone.
I love the community, but just how they doing this is so scary. Just even for them walking to the store, even for them coming out, taking the trash out.
So how do they get around that?
I drive them. I drive them everywhere. I drive them to school, home, I drive them to my mom's, everywhere they need to go, I take them.
So a young black man alone would be targeted by police?
Oh yeah, that's why we got a buddy system. I would never let my oldest son and my kids growing up walk by themselves. We send the smaller kids with them so they won't mess with them. And let's pray that they don't.
To make them look less suspicious?
Yes, to make them look less suspicious.
The LAPD's efforts to curb crime are overseen by the Board of Police Commissioners, a committee of civilians appointed by the mayor, which makes recommendations for policies and reforms, including for the previous laser program.
Before you stepped in and said, look, we need formal oversight over these programs, what was happening? Was this all happening kind of in the dark?
It's not fair to say it was happening in the dark. As these programs became more widely adopted, they generated both concern from members of the public and also questions by members of the commission.
Now, are you hopeful that the department will develop the right tools and strategies to properly deploy?
I'm confident that they will. Where they've seen the most successful interventions has been in areas where they have partnered with community as opposed to older policing models where they simply bombard communities.
But bombarding communities is one of the one of the things that critics will say is happening right now as a result of these predpol hotspots.
There are critics that will tell you that. There are also people in communities that are experiencing crime spikes that will tell you that they welcome additional law enforcement resources.
Now, what would you say to someone who says, look, I'm doing nothing wrong. Collect all the data you want about me. Shine the light on me as bright as you can. And in fact, you'll see that I'm doing nothing wrong.
Well, I think we have to start with who gets to decide what is right or wrong first, and who has the power to make that narrative. When we think about the youth that have been stopped by police and entered into gang databases and can no longer get scholarships because they had a Sharpie in their pocket and were on the way to school, or a marker, so now they're in a gang database. They weren't doing anything wrong, but the LAPD said they were.
Do you have concerns about the overlap between the Fourth Amendment and concerns about predictive policing?
Yes, I think there is a real overlap. One of the interesting realities of where predictive policing has shown up is in New York. So right after the New York Police Department had its stop and frisk practice declared unconstitutional, Commissioner Bratton, the same person who did the green light of predictive policing in LA, is now back. And what does he say? Don't worry about stop and frisk. We have predictive policing. Don't worry about this old-fashioned technology. We have this new form. And again, I read that as saying that we can use the same kinds of identification of areas and people to use the same kind of social control that stop and frisk was in a technological form.
How do you think the LAPD's pause or stop of the laser program will change the trajectory of the further deployment of predictive policing programs across the country?
Well, I'm somewhat of a cynic because I'm not sure that the real lesson of that audit was taken. Because the real lesson of that audit would be bring in people who are impacted by this technology into that room before you decide the next one.
There's something so fascinating, slightly voyeuristic, but fascinating about watching suspected criminals kind of at work.
This is all caught on someone's Ring
Yes.
doorbell.
To the best of my knowledge, it's a Ring. It's on the neighborhood app. And the nice thing about it is our investigators have access to this from the neighborhood or the officer's portal, where they can kind of watch these videos, see this, interact with them a little bit. Our detectives noticed the video posted. When they saw those subjects you see, they recognized who they were. And when they eventually contacted them, they kind of admitted to what their behaviors and activities were. That resulted in a filing of criminal charges for conspiracy to commit theft.
This is pretty irrefutable evidence as you're building a case.
It helps dramatically.
In May 2019, El Monte police began a partnership with Amazon-owned Ring. Ring makes motion sensor video doorbells and home security cameras that can share videos to a neighborhood crime and security app called Neighbors, which allows users to view local crime in real time, comment, and identify suspects to police.
If you have Ring, how does that video then make its way over to you?
If someone has a Ring camera, they download the software, and then they choose to be part of the El Monte Police Department Neighbors portal. Then not only can the police department see it, but every other neighbor who's part of that portal gets to see it also.
And how many people do you estimate in the city of El Monte have the Ring camera?
I know that we have about 1,000 different users. It's not all Ring cameras. Even if you don't have a Ring camera, you can still be part of this network by downloading the software.
So that's ostensibly like 1,000 extra pairs of eyes helping to monitor neighborhoods.
Exactly. You saw there's 4,000 views on some of these. That's a lot of information. As that's saying, there's 4,000 people looking at one post that we can comment on, and people would see our comments. That we can reach out to the public and ask them, please call the watch commander's number. Here's the direct number. That's huge. So to me, it's already a success.
Since the Neighbors app was launched in May 2018, there have been reports that police calls and suspicious persons reports are disproportionately singling out people of color. As of February 2020, over 900 police departments across the country have partnered with the service.
You know, you scored a victory by pressuring the LAPD to back off laser. Now that laser has been dismantled, aren't places like this, laser zones, anchor points, aren't they no longer a concern?
They are a concern for us. The biggest victory was that we exposed again not only the history of
places being continually targeted, but the new tool that they're using, and that the community realized this tool, I can understand it. It may be science, it may be algorithm, it may be saying something fancy, but it's the same policing that's always existed. This place is still going to be targeted by law enforcement, or excessively targeted, always targeted. LAPD is going to be here. What we're doing is showing that we see through it all, and we're fighting back, and we're going to continue to fight back.
We've entered an era where technology, big data, and artificial intelligence are rapidly being added to the arsenal of law enforcement agencies without knowing the full extent of their efficacy or consequences. Even after almost a decade in operation, the LAPD Inspector General's audit could not prove PredPol's effectiveness in combating crime due to inconsistencies in its use. And in 2019, Chicago police quietly ended an 8-year-old predictive policing program shortly after a study was published that concluded it failed to reduce crime, despite their numerous attempts to fix its problems.
Data-driven policing, is there an appropriate place for that in society?
Absolutely. I mean, we can't go back. The real question isn't as much around whether it's appropriate, but how data is collected, how data is used, who's involved in the collection of that data, who is it shared with, and the degree to which the utilization of data could result in either violations of privacy or a sort of feedback loop, which creates these policing hotspots that lead to additional criminalization of neighborhoods or individuals.
See the helicopter all day, every day? Wherever the helicopter, that's where I'm going. Because I need to know if that's my son they got over there.
And we get the Citizen app, and we see stuff on the Citizen app. We call our kids and FaceTime them so we can put them at the time of the place so they can't put robbery
Make
charges
them
on
take
them.
a picture of their location.
So that's like everyday life.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
You got to. Our words against
So you basically have to have an alibi like all the time.
Oh, yes.
Do you guys feel like what's happening now, you know, with your sons being harassed, that it's sort of like a form of social control? Like, we're watching you at all times.
Oh, yes. Scary. We just want justice. We need them to know from right from wrong.
I'm next. Who's the last person playing? Because I want to play.
Hey, thanks for checking out CBSN Originals on YouTube. If you want to watch more documentaries, download the free CBS News app on your phone, tablet, smart TV, or any streaming device. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking down here. Thanks for watching.